You ready? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Planning Commission Public Rezoning Information Meeting. Present at this evening's meeting are Denny Reeder, David Klein, BJ Getz, I'm Clint Wiley, Jeremiah Weddle is here, and Jeff Sudmiller should be here any moment. The purpose of this meeting is to consider rezoning applications submitted to the Washington County Department of Planning and Zoning. This meeting will be conducted as follows. Staff will present a summary of the application. The applicant will have 15 minutes for his or her presentation. Planning Commission members will have the opportunity to ask questions of staff and or the applicant. Citizens will be given the opportunity for comment. Individuals will be given 3 minutes to speak, and one representative of a group or organization will be given 5 minutes to speak. The applicant will be given 5 minutes for rebuttal. The Planning Commission will review all facts and information received during this meeting and make its recommendation at a later date to the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners will then hold a public rezoning hearing. The date of the County Commissioners' public hearing is not known at this time. It will be advertised in the local newspaper's legal ads 14 days before the hearing and again 7 days before the hearing, as well as posted on the county's website. At the end of the County Commissioners' public hearing, the comment period will close. This meeting is being recorded, and please silence all electronic devices. And as a note, I mentioned previously that comment is limited. There will be a countdown, a visible countdown on that screen. All right. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Travis Allen. I'm a comprehensive planner with the Department of Planning and Zoning. As mentioned, we're here to hear piecemeal rezoning amendment RZ 21-005. This is for properties located on Sharpsburg Pike, about a third of a mile south of the I-70 interchange between Colonel H.K. Douglas and Poffenberger Road, totaling 9.92 acres. The applicant is requesting to apply the mixed-use commercial zoning district as a floating zone atop the existing highway interchange base zone that exists to the property. So what I'd like to do first is just to briefly go over some of the purpose of this district and the criteria, and then hit some major bullet point concerns that staff has with the application. First, in terms of the purpose and criteria of the mixed-use district, that is outlined in Article 16 of the zoning ordinance. The mixed-use type of districts allow a greater design flexibility than conventional zoning. In this case, the MXC district is designed to permit a mixture of residential uses and limited commercial uses to provide goods and services necessary to the development of the neighborhood according to a pre-approved master plan. The MXC district is established as a floating zone, which, as you're probably familiar with from the rural business zonings that we do from time to time, they have to meet a specific set of conditions before that zone is affixed to the property. Those conditions are outlined in Article 16.4 of the zoning ordinance. They're covered in greater detail in the staff report, but just a couple of them to bring to your attention include the location. The properties must be adjacent to adequate roadway facilities that will be able to serve existing and future traffic generated by the development, or be able to improve them to meet those roadway conditions. The site should also be served by public water and sewer and be able to comply with the requirements of the county's adequate public facilities ordinance, including things like schools. Page 4 of the staff report outlines permitted uses and densities in a table format for your reference. There's no minimum area for these districts. There is a minimum of 2 types of residential uses that are required, 15% or 25 dwelling units of which is meant to be multifamily. In terms of commercial uses, when this zone is applied atop a HI zoning district as the base zoning, they are allowed up to 70% of the area of the site to be devoted to commercial. They have to devote 5% to open space, and there's a maximum of 12 dwelling units per acre allowed in these zones, or 24 for high-rise buildings, which don't figure into the design that they have presented in this application. In terms of design standards that apply to mixed-use districts, the development is meant to have a comprehensive and cohesive pathway system to serve not only motorized uses, but also non-motorized trips throughout the facility. Commercial uses should be primarily to serve residents, but not exclusively. And also, as a part of the concept plan, eliminated on page 4 and 5, concept plan should identify the location of the various types of uses on the property. Those include the number and density of residential units, the square footage devoted to commercial uses, and the existing and proposed open space for the site. The design of the concept plan should be compatible with surrounding land uses and identify things like buffer yards, road access points, the water and sewer usage for the property, historic sites in the district, amongst other considerations. And again, those are elaborated in greater detail on pages 4 and 5. So that's just kind of a brief synopsis of some of the requirements for the mixed-use zoning district that must be presented in their application packet and on their concept plan. And again, at this point, I just wanted to hit a couple of bullet point concerns that staff noted in reviewing the application. One of those concerns relates to the mix of uses as presented on their concept plan. We want to state, very clearly up front that the design of the concept plan absolutely does meet the minimum requirements of this proposed district. So that is certainly the case. However, as we have noted before, there is a minimum of 2 types of residential uses in the property, and of the 111 units that they have proposed for the site, 105 of them are devoted to multifamily units. So there is a clear tendency towards apartment units in their design, with only 6 townhouse units. In terms of commercial space, again, as we mentioned, they're allowed up to 70% of the property to be devoted to commercial uses. In this case, at this point, the concept plan proposes only 6,000 square feet devoted to commercial on the site, which is also a fairly small percentage. In terms of open space, it's not entirely clearly defined on the concept plan, but it does not appear to significantly exceed the minimum 5% requirement of the ordinance. So it's staff's opinion that we believe that the design could be tweaked a little bit to better meet the true intent of this mixed-use district. Beyond the concept plan design, I would say probably even of greater concern to us relates to the adequate public facilities ordinance concerns of this development. First, in terms of schools. According to the March 2021 enrollment report, which is the most recent one we've received from the Board of Education, this development falls within the following school districts: Rockland Woods Elementary, E. Russell Hicks Middle, and South Hagerstown High. At this point, based upon enrollment reports, each of those school districts already exceeds the rated capacity, and that is even before any students would be generated by this development. So they're already exceeding capacity at this point. Most concerning would be South Hagerstown High, which already exceeds the 120% cutoff capacity in which the developer can automatically go to use the alternate mitigation contribution to meet their school mitigation requirements. When they exceed 120%, an agreement has to be worked out with the Board of County Commissioners and the Board of Education were the development ultimately to be approved and the development plan approved at a later stage. We would further point out that in the 2021 Washington County Public Schools Educational Facilities Master Plan, which was just released in June, it states that South Hagerstown High is projected to remain over capacity for the foreseeable future, and explicitly states that Washington County Public Schools does not currently anticipate the ability to add a comprehensive high school in the next 10 years. So in terms of other remedies to meet school mitigation requirements, those are unknown at present. Things like redistricting are not currently called out for the school districts that feed into this particular development at this time. They're for other elementary schools that feed into other districts elsewhere in the county. We'd also point out that Washington County Public Schools did have capacity concerns that were pointed out to us during the preliminary consultation phase of this development's review. Primarily because not only are they looking at, this proposed development, but there's also several developments both in the city and the county that are either online already, ready to build out, or are coming online in the near future that also feed into this school district. And based upon what is in the applicant's justification statement in the application packet, we just aren't clear how exactly they intend to address the school capacity concerns. The final major bullet point concern relates to public water for the site. That does not at first appear to be a major concern. Number one, because the site is in the city of Hagerstown's medium range growth area. It has existing water service, and it is identified within the county's water and sewer plan for existing service. The issue relates to the growth model that the city of Hagerstown has developed for basing the boundaries of its overall medium range growth area. From what we've been told by the city, those boundaries are based upon the existing zoning classifications in developing their growth model. So were this site to be rezoned for a higher intensity development, it ultimately is not 100% clear that the city would be able to serve the site or not. They may be able to, they may not. It's just not entirely clear at this point. It also might be a situation where if they are to serve public water at this site, we may have to retract the medium range growth area elsewhere within the county. So just kind of a lot of unknowns in terms of the actual ability to access that public water, which at first seems like it would be available for the site. So to wrap up here, speaking honestly, staff does really feel that at some point in time in the future, a mixed-use district does make a lot of sense for this particular location. Our only hesitation really is the timing of this related to those adequate public facilities concerns of especially the school district capacity and water availability for the site. Again, we mentioned that we believe the concept plan could be tweaked a little bit to better fit the intent, but really it's kind of those APFO things that are the biggest concerns. Finally, we would say that in terms of written comments received by staff, we have received, I think, 6 at this point. I believe those were provided in your agenda packets. They were all in opposition to the proposed development, primarily again to APFO concerns, things like roads, traffic generation, school capacity, as well as any effects on neighborhood safety.
Right. Thank you, Travis. Are there any questions for Travis? Sorry. Caught you right as you were trying to sneak away. Any questions for Travis before I let him?
General question, are there other residential developers looking to build in that area? Generally, that where those schools serve, is this just one or are there others as well?
50 single family homes.
I'm sorry, ma'am. The question is to staff.
To go a little more specific, do we know off the top of our head how many houses are left to be built in the Westfields? I mean, you look at Rockland Woods being at 97%, and I think there's still a tremendous number remaining there.
I don't know if I could give you an exact count, but they're building out section 7 and 8 of Westfields right now. I think at least a portion of section 7 is done, but they also have section 8 to build out too. So I think we're looking at a couple hundred more housing units in Westfields.
700 is the total maximum capacity, isn't it?
Jill Baker, Director of the Department of Planning and Zoning. The answer to your question is yes, there are several residential developments that are still being built within this district. They are included within our calculations to determine that capacity. They include Westfields, the latest section of Claggett's Mill, and within the city, we have several, including Hager's Crossing, which is adding, I think, still another section that we expect to also be put into the school district. So it's
Just to clarify something that you said, so if I look at the 97, 114, and 120, it includes an estimate of still be built because this says current enrollment.
So what you have in front of you is current enrollment from the Board of Education.
Okay.
What we add into
So
that. And
it's there now, and we have more coming.
Correct. So South Hagerstown High School is well over capacity today without anything new being built. We expect that trend to continue with what has been approved and in the pipeline. at this point in time, which is why we have brought this issue up to you this evening. So the answer to your question is yes, there are other subdivisions out there that have been approved and are in the pipeline. And they are accounted for within our calculations in terms of determining capacity.
So those pipeline developments, they have paid the AMC, correct? I'm assuming they've paid
I don't know.
The
something.
ones in the
towards-
county, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Jill,
So what has been done with that money already to alleviate any of the overcrowding?
We have not, because of the housing bust, we've really not accumulated a whole lot of money in that account. But it is being used for things like maintenance and upgrades where we can within the school district. But the little bit of money that we have acquired, or I shouldn't say acquired, but accumulated at this point in time, has not gotten to the level of building a new high school. I will say that Westfield's part of their development was the donation of the elementary school. So that's how they sort of
Right.
paid their APFO fees. Others have paid within the formula, but a lot of this development is coming from within the city, the new stuff from Hager's Crossings and so forth that don't pay into that.
So Hager's Crossing feeds South Hagerstown Heights?
Yes, believe it or not,
Out
I
from
couldn't
what?
believe it
Because
either.
I was like, I thought Hager's Crossing was out by Walmart and Best
It
Buy.
is.
And
It
and
is
that
the
feeds
very,
south?
it is the very northern limit of the South High School District.
wow.
Is that part of the redistricting that happened a few years ago?
I can't remember. I can't remember when that happened.
The boundary.
Surprises
I thought too. I thought
Surprises
that was
me
high
that-
for sure, but
That from that far away, it feeds into South. That just caught me off
I
guard.
knew that. I drove back there in the spring and how they had everyone did all the signs for graduating seniors and things like that. I saw a bunch of South Highlands back there. I was pretty surprised by that.
The school district boundaries often don't follow any logical geography in terms of, southern part of the county devoted to the southern school districts at all.
So this situation here, where you have what you said is a mixed-use development, which generally speaking is fine, except that we've got these problems. So we have school issues and possibly water issues that are acting as an impediment to growth and development in this particular area. And then apparently anywhere within that school district, not just here, right? So if somebody else comes in and they bought some land and it's right along the highway or whatever, and they wanted to put a development in, then again, we're up against the issue of inadequate facilities, right? So it's not just for this development, it's just in general, that's an impediment to growth in the area.
in that particular school district, yes.
Is anyone at the county, I don't know, say,
Or the
put
board of
anyone on the
ed.
spot, is any group, is anybody looking that as an economic development problem? Or is the school board looking at that as a problem? You indicated no, that there's no plans to do anything for 10 years or more.
At this point, we have been discussing with the Board of Education. It is ultimately sort of up to them. I think you're seeing movement with the Board of Education in terms of their plans. That started with their first analysis of under enrollment schools to determine whether or not things should be moved around, changed, schools closed, anything like that. I think what you're going to start seeing in the next round is potential redistrictings. That could very well happen. Matter of fact, if this developer wants to move forward, if you decide this is a good location and they want to move forward, they could always petition the Board of Education to redistrict. That's an allowable option within our APFO. That doesn't mean the Board of Ed will do that, but we are looking at these things. But bottom line is, it's going to cost.
Well, we just had this discussion 2 weeks ago that according to the comprehensive plan, growth and development should take place in places, in areas where there are adequate facilities to support it. And if the facilities aren't there, then it shouldn't happen. So to not get the cart before the horse, to me, it's not just a problem for this developer that wants to do something that on the surface is not a bad thing at all. But if it's creating problems that the rest of the county that we have to deal with on down the road, then it's not a good thing. And not just for this developer, but for any development in that area. So at some point, the facilities, if that's going to be a growth area, the facilities, the adequate public facilities, that needs to be handled, and it needs to be done before development takes place. I work, throughout the entire region down into Montgomery County, and I still see Frederick County busting their guts to try to get roads in and so forth. They went crazy because they wanted all this residential development, 20 years ago. And I was part of that. I worked with that, and then discovered all of a sudden now they had all this traffic. They have all these problems. Oh my God, the schools are overcrowded. We need to build a new school every year. And I would hate to see that situation come to the county here, because at that point, it's we, the taxpayers, that are paying for it. So I really, the whole problem of the adequate public facilities, to me, needs to be resolved before other development or changes in zoning are allowed. Just my opinion.
Right, because the existing zoning, if I understand it correctly, that's where the comprehensive plan and the adequate public facilities and everything are structured on.
Right.
And this is zoned highway interchange today, which would not necessarily have any impact on the school side.
Right.
And that's probably the difference when the comprehensive plan is built and all those things are done and you target those areas, then you're targeting the zoning towards what the adequate public facilities in the area need to be.
And again, I think, we haven't gotten to the applicant's presentation yet, and I'm sure they have some rebuttal to what we're saying here. But it's just, I agree with you that it's our job to point out to you what's happening out there, what our numbers are. And the answer is yes, we are looking at this at a high level between the commissioners and the Board of County and the Board of Education.
And the percentages for the schools are the state numbers, not a local estimate, right? When you say it's 120% overcrowded, that's based on the state figures.
Middle and high would be on state rated capacity.
Right, that's higher. That's higher than the local.
The elementary school is slightly lower. It's local rated capacity, which you can only have up to 90% of it. So
right.
The elementary school is less than 100% capacity, but it exceeds the local rated capacity.
Well, to me, this problem goes far beyond just this application, which actually I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with the application. I mean, having a mixed use development right along a highway interchange like that off the 70s, I don't see any problem with that at all. What I do see a problem with is if there are water issues, that's one thing. If there are road issues, that's another thing. But probably that can easily be done. But building another school or anything going to get the school issue fixed is not an easy fix. And it's not going to be done here. I mean, that's got to be looked at the county commissioners level and the school board level.
And the state.
Yeah. So again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds with this without the applicant having their opportunity to talk to you about what their ideas and thoughts are on this. These are all good points for your discussion and for your deliberation later. And
I don't want to appear negative. I just want to point out the elephant in the room.
Well, having said that, why don't we give the applicant their 15 minutes of
Fire away.
presentation time. Tough act to follow.
County staff always is.
Yeah. Welcome and have a seat. Favor and state your name and address for the record, please.
Certainly, Zachary Kiefer, 19405 Emerald Square, Suite 2100, Office 202, Hagerstown 21742, attorney for the applicant.
Trevor Frederick, engineer, Frederick Simon Associates, 128 South Potomac Street, Hagerstown, Maryland, 21740.
So obviously we're here on RZ 21005. Travis went through some of the underlying kind of basics of the property of the project. We're an HI highway interchange looking for an MXC overlay. It's interesting, the staff report, because they seem to kind of hide the fact that they do admit that this concept plan that was presented to staff, commented on by the staff in the various departments of the county, and then ultimately brought before the planning commission once. It does meet all the requirements of the MXC district from a design standpoint. It doesn't require a a minimum number of different residential uses. All it requires is 2 separate uses. We have that with the multifamily apartments and the townhome. As far as retail space, restaurant and restaurant space that's contemplated in the commercial use, we meet those requirements there as well. So I also want to point out that there are no MXC overlays in the county as current. So to compare this to something that doesn't currently exist, I think that's kind of tough to do in looking at what a true perfect MXC district would be when we don't even have any in the county as they stand now. And I agree with Commissioner Klein, with Commissioner Getz, that there are some issues that arise in the APFO, in the traffic, water and sewer and things like that. But I do believe that the applicant, as the concept plan is currently presented, can address those issues in a satisfactory way. Starting with traffic, the traffic impact study was done back in April of 2020, I believe. That contemplated a hotel use, which is a principally permitted use in the HI district. So we don't even need to have this meeting here today that the developer could go in, slap up a hotel, and none of the residents or neighbors or anyone having any opinion on that could really do anything about it. But we're here today, and everyone has an opportunity to say their piece and provide the information and the testimony to the Planning Commission. But what I was getting at there is back in 2020, they did a traffic impact study that contemplated a hotel. In changing that use from a hotel to multifamily with a mixed residential commercial use, that actually, according to the traffic impact study, decreases the number of trips from 378 to 223 in the morning, 328 to 205 in the afternoon, and 326 to 315 on Saturdays. And Trevor has a copy of that reanalysis that he can pass out and allow you guys to look at as well. So yes, there are going to be certain issues and certain concerns with traffic. In addition to ingress and egress along Colonel Henry K. Douglas Drive, there's also this private drive that connects the area of Building 1, the area of Building 2, and also provides another means of access to the property. Trevor tells me this is going to be a full motion signaled intersection paid for by the developer. So we believe that's going to relieve or alleviate a lot of those issues as well, as far as traffic flow and things like that. The original improvements to Sharpsburg Pike that were contemplated as part of the accepted traffic impact study from 2020, those are still going to be done by the developer. I've mentioned those in my justification statement, but I believe there's some road widening, construction of maybe an A-cell, D-cell lane, and a medium down the middle of Sharpsburg Pike. Those are all going to be, in addition to the traffic signal, are going to be paid for by the developer. Utilities, public water and sewer. I was reminded by the applicant that they have signed a pre-annexation agreement with the city to provide water to the site. They bought the sewer allocations, the EDUs. So the water and sewer are already teed up and ready to go for this property. To the extent that, the water is not guaranteed until you submit the final site plan, that's certainly true. But I don't believe to this point we've gotten any comment back from the city utility department that suggests that water and sewer are going to be inadequate or they're going to create pressure issues or flow issues or anything like that. So I believe from the standpoint of the city, they're confident or they at least don't object to this project from a water and sewer standpoint. Now, to the extent that it's going to cause the medium range growth area to be realigned or reconfigured, it's not one of the elements of the MXC that this project have no impact or cause any reconfiguration of the medium range growth area. It may, it's part of the ongoing process of development in the county. I don't think that should be necessarily considered as a negative against the applicant's application. I guess kind of the big issue that Travis and Jill touched on. Obviously, Commissioner Klein,
He's fine.
you touched on it as well, is the APFO school adequacy. There is case law on the subject, actually comes out of Washington County with the Emerald Point project. Case law from the Court of Special Appeals here in Maryland says that adequate public facilities school adequacy is to be dealt with at the final site plan approval process, not the zoning approval process portion, which is what we're here for today. If we don't get the zoning, we obviously, the adequacy is a moot point. If we get the zoning, and choose not to deal with the adequacy, or adequacy is, and seat capacity is not redistricted into this area or anything like that, then we're sort of stuck. So we do have to address the issue. The applicant has mentioned to me that anything's on the table for that, whether it's these apartments become age restricted, which exempts from the APFO, whether it's paying them, negotiating with the county and the Board of Education, the county commissioners, paying that mitigation fee. There's, and Travis mentioned it in his staff report too, there's a number of different ways to skin this cat. We don't get there without the zoning approval that we're here for tonight. Density limitations, as Trevor showed in his concept plan, we meet all those. The open space is kind of an interesting issue. On the concept plan, it does look like the open space is all taken up by stormwater management. When in reality, Trevor obviously being this being his wheelhouse here, if you look at the actual numbers, and the minimum is a 5% area for open space, Trevor's confident and the engineers are confident that we can actually hit that and create about 2.6 acres, which would constitute about 26% of the total 9-acre project that would be devoted to for open space. I know it doesn't seem like that there, but it doesn't seem like that on the concept plan. But from what the engineers tell me, they're running the numbers and they're confident that they can meet those minimums. Again, that has been met throughout. And again, the applicant's confident that any issues, including the certain elements of the set forth in the ordinance, that we can meet those and satisfy those elements and obligations. So historical resources, really not a whole lot there. We're along 65 where there's a lot of commercial development going in. So in conclusion, I do want to bring to light and hope enter into the record the fact that under the current HI zoning, again, principally permitted uses include retail, reception facilities, laundromats, restaurants, amusement parks, carpentry, woodworking, department stores, hotels and apartment hotels, sheet metal shops, swimming pools, labs, chemical, physical, and biological hospitals. All that I would submit have a greater impact on traffic and certainly the water and sewer issue than the apartment that's contemplated, and the townhomes and commercial uses that are contemplated here under. So again, there's permitted uses from the IR district that can go in, as soon as a final site plan is approved. And interestingly enough, apartment hotels are not defined in the zoning ordinance. They're essentially an apartment complex that doesn't require a long-term lease. So you still kind of have some of that same, and that's courtesy of Google and Wikipedia, I think. But it's still some of the same use that we're asking for under this MXC that's permitted tomorrow under the HI district. So again, not to kick the can down the road, but we certainly do have some negotiation and resolution that needs to come about with regard to the adequacy of the schools. But otherwise, the applicant and certainly myself as the applicant's attorney believe that one, this project meets all the elements for an MXC overlay, and two, this is not quite the correct time to hash out those adequacy issues. That can be done. We'll certainly have to do that before final site plan approval, the final site plan approval. But otherwise, we submit that this MXC is appropriate right along 65, where a lot of the developments coming in. We've got all these these warehouses are being built. Well, workers are going to need some place to live. And, we want them in the county. We want them paying county taxes, buying goods and services in the county. And, if not here for an MXC district, which there is no other in the district, if not here, where? And with that, I would open things back up to questions from the commission.
All right, 10 minutes. That's not bad. Questions?
Can you provide a case number or something like that on the, you said it was Emerald Point. It was,
Yep, it was, it's the case is Cremens versus County Commissioners, Washington County. And that's 164 MD app, force 26.
So what's your time frame? So if you got the zoning next month, whenever it is, what's your time frame? When would we see a site plan?
I can touch on that. So the site plan process, this has a state highway permit. It's got to be applied for and acquired. Since we have the Route 65 improvements there, you're probably looking at a minimum of 6 months before we come back into planning commission. More likely 9 to 12 months before we come back in front of you all to present a site plan for final approval.
And that's a good point, that the adequate public facilities issues are resolved in the site plan, not through the zoning. But can you solve the school problem in a year? I mean, clearly that's the big issue. I have no problem with traffic. That you can make roads. It's right along an interstate. It's nothing. I don't have any problems with traffic and those types of things. And frankly, with the dramatic increase in housing costs now, it's kind of nice to see that there would be some rental units that people could hopefully afford to rent. So I don't have a problem with that. But it's still that elephant in the room is the school capacities. Can you solve that in that time?
Presumably, if we get before the Board of County Commissioners and they recognize the need and are on board with this project, and they say, we'll talk to the Board of Ed and we're going to just take the AMC or require some other mitigation, then yeah, I guess presumably it could be taken care of in a couple months, or however it takes for us, however long, I guess another 2 to 3 months to get before the Board of County Commissioners. But if we're talking about a bigger step here, redistricting or something along those lines, we may need all of those 9 to 12 months. Or
well, and as we said before, it's not just you. Any developer that wants to develop in that South High School District area is going to run up against this wall.
Sure. Yeah, I have other clients, and I get heartburn every time they call and they say that they're, they've got something that's cooking and it happens to be in the South High School District, and it's it's frustrating, but it's
I think,
sort of a good problem to have.
I think, I would like to read this case a little bit. The question that you raised for me is, does this rezoning question, the adequate school system, is that a part of this rezoning question or not? That's the thing that I think sticks out in my mind the most, that I want to read that case and see what it comes back across with.
Right. And that's a good point. Is that an issue for zoning, or is that an issue for site plan approval?
Obviously, we're on.
I mean, that's
our
just to
argument.
be fair. If your concept meets the requirements of the zoning, okay. But if it brings up problems, then that we can't approve a site plan because you're not meeting these needs, then where does that leave you? You're still out in the cold.
We at least have the zoning approval at that point, though, which is what we're here for. And
Well,
yeah.
okay, yeah, you could build a hotel tomorrow, right, and use as much water as the 100 apartments
And
would
have
use.
traffic that,
And have traffic and all that, and get that. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
But the people in the hotel aren't going to be going to South High
right.
or the elementary schools. That's the issue that has to be solved in. It's not going to be solved in this room. That's between the school board and the county commissioners.
And neither
but
are
that's an issue.
neither are the residents if it's age restricted.
And that's a
applicants
cool
sort of
idea.
Thrown that out kind of as we've been digesting the staff report. That presumably could fix the adequacy issue like that. So I think from a business and economic standpoint, the applicant sees the need and the demand and wants to strike while the iron's hot, and whether that's geared towards young families coming to the area and living in these apartments and working and spending their money, or the age restricted residents or residents who qualify for the age restriction. It appears that
But haven't we
one's
heard,
just as good.
haven't we heard the age restricted demand is falling off now, and that really probably is sort of maybe, I don't know if this is really the case. I don't want to make an accusation, but it's sort of a way to sort of maybe backdoor a solution that could eventually be challenged or changed later on.
We get that all the time. People
Right.
submit a site plan and then 3 years later, well, it didn't pan out, so we want to change. We get that all the
And
time.
then everyone gets another bite at the apple, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be coming here hat in hand, tail between my legs, and not looking forward to that. But it's not just it's not simply saying, oh yeah, we're going to be age restricted. I mean, the zoning ordinance provides for that. I think the state code, the state law is in on that as well. It's just not sort of lip service to the planning commission or the local government.
I'm more curious about, economic development and where we're headed as a county. Because
Yeah.
if the county's going to grow and we're going to have, and you can
Right.
see from the census, we have 10% population growth in the last, between the last two censuses. What are we doing to make sure we have adequate schools
Right.
to support the growth that we seem to be driving here?
That's kind of the point is the current school situation is a huge deterrent to economic development in the area. So if I were a developer or knew other developers that were interested in building in the area, I would be getting together with the economic development folks in the county, and I would try to get in front of the county commissioners and explain, hey, this is a big problem. What you guys going to do about it? Because it's kind of, I want to say our hands are tied, but frankly, they are. If I would never vote to approve a site plan that's going to violate school capacities. Would never vote to approve something like
I
that.
don't even think we can ask for.
Right.
You can't approve it.
The limitations here are imposed from the outside, and it's not within our ability to solve those problems. And it's not really within you can do roads and things like that. The schools you can't just do unless you're going to go build some schools. And I'm guessing you were not going to do that.
We haven't discussed that yet.
Yeah.
That was a good answer.
But I mean,
Oh, 3 years.
but that's a situation that's affecting you and other folks. And frankly, anybody that wants to invest in this part of the area. And it's an issue that needs to be resolved to move on.
You're absolutely right. I mean, Hager's Crossing goes to south, and that's 15, 20 minutes up down the road from
Conversation for
Clear Spring. So it's
during high school.
beyond my purview, but
Yeah. I mean, I've got no problem with your concept plan. You're in a growth area. I mean, it's growing like crazy. They're working on the roads. They're working on the bridge there. It's right along a highway. The concept, I've got no problem with the concept. It's the details. And then what we need to know is that something we worry about now for a zoning hearing, or is that something we worry about when we see a site plan?
I would say the case law says at the site plan.
So the question that I asked on case law, I'm not a lawyer. I didn't spend 3 years in law school, so I'm going to defer to you. We're talking about apples and oranges when you talk about Emerald Point in this concept. I mean, Emerald Point, I would doubt that even though the kids could walk to Paramount, there's probably a kid in there that does.
You're absolutely.
So you're talking about a use in Emerald Point that is markedly different than this use. And I'm just asking about the case law. I'm not.
You're absolutely right. That it is apples and oranges, and the only reason I brought up Emerald Point is that's the case. The case law is concerning Emerald Point.
Yeah, the question has to do with zoning and school-based APFO fee at the given
Correct.
time of zoning, and that's why Emerald Point's tied in. You can't look conceptually, but they were probably going for a rezoning at the time.
They were asking for the PUD
that's why I wanna look.
overlay, which sort of triggers the same process that
Exactly.
you need the zoning before you can touch on any of the adequacy issues that come up during site plan approval or subdivision approval. Yeah. But yeah, totally agree with your observation.
Jill, can we get a commentary from the county attorneys?
Burke County.
Thank you.
All right, well, why don't we take this opportunity for public citizen input,
Thank you.
and then
Thank you.
you will be back for 5 minutes of rebuttal.
If not less.
If not less. Yes. All right, we do have a sign-up sheet. Don't worry, if you didn't sign up and decide you want to speak, we'll give you an opportunity. The first person I have on here is Mary Shipway. If you'd like to,
Discussing this.
yeah, sure. Would you mind being able to? Okay, he's going to turn it for you. That's a fair
You
request.
got COVID over there?
Yes, I'm coming.
Can you just briefly show where the 2.6 acres in the water, just what you were pointing to previously, so that she and others in the audience can,
See what the layout.
yeah, and where the stoplight was going to be exactly.
So generally here you have your Colonel Henry K. Douglas Drive. I believe this is the Lytle. And you got the Duncan. Yes, everyone's on board. Aldi, I'm sorry.
Taco Bell and, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what's down here. Here's the proposed site that Frederick Seibert did up in color. So you've got access here, that's, I believe, signaled already. And then you have this private drive that's going to connect where the contemplated building 2 is. Building 1 has a mix of the residential and the commercial. So this is where the restaurant, I believe, and retail space contemplated to be. And then you've got this private drive that splits these two parcels. It comes out here to Sharpsburg Pike. That's where the signal is going to be built. I believe state highway is going to require a median through here to maintain the traffic as well as with the full motion or full movement signal, traffic signal down here. We sort of note this open space with the gazebo and play area here. There's some open space over here. Here's the 6 townhomes. Frederick Seibert and Trevor have told me that they're fairly confident that this stormwater management could possibly be worked on to provide a little bit more open space. But, again, that's sort of a final site plan approval process. Obviously, you've got the 50-foot buffer here that's required by the ordinance. And then the Cross Creek development, obviously, on that side.
All right. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate that.
How tall are the apartments?
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe they're 3 or 4 stories tall.
Okay. All right. So let's go on with this. Mary Shipway, if you could please come forward and have a seat. Yes, ma'am.
So my first question.
I'm sorry. Hang on. Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Play
Your address?
18519 Nathan Court, Hagerstown, Maryland.
Okay. Go ahead.
So my first question is, and I don't know if anybody knows when this is going to happen, but when is Colonel Henry K. Douglas Drive expected to open up all the way over to 40?
I don't know if any of us know that answer.
Because right now we live on Poffenberger Road and that traffic is a nightmare. And I know you say roads can be built, but I don't know what traffic impact studies, who's conducted those. But if you drive anywhere from Sharpsburg Pike, south of Poffenberger Road, going north all the way up to 70, the traffic is a nightmare, and it's been that way for years. So those impact studies apparently haven't been too effective because they rerouted all that traffic one time, tore it all up, redid it again. And I don't know when the last one was done, if that was before the third sheets within 2 miles has been put in, and the Aldi and the Dunkin' Donuts and the Walmart. So traffic is already very congested on Sharpsburg Pike heading north before 70. And so right now, since there is no Colonel H. Henry Douglas Drive going all the way over to 40, Poffenberger Road is that road that everybody takes. It's a 25-mile-an-hour zone road. People fly on that. And I've already had probably 5 cars in my yard hit my tree, and a lot of people walk that. So if we're going to have all of this extra traffic there, that will be the road they'll take over a 1-lane bridge all the way over to Boonesboro and stuff, because
1 minute
most
remaining.
avoid 70. Now, granted, I realize, the bridge work and stuff will be done eventually someday, but for right now, Poffenberger Road is that alternative, the detour to get around all of that. And then my other thing, if developing all of this, seems to be that there's plenty of other places around the Hagerstown area that is abandoned. There's stores moving out, available parking lots. The area up by Hager's Crossing is one of those. I don't know why, if you're going to do something, utilize an already existing developed area that probably already had all the utilities and such run to it for the public services. So that's really all I have to say.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm not sure if I'm reading this as a Kurt.
Yeah.
Oh, Kurt Shipley, would you like to come forward, please? And if you could state your name and address for the record.
Kurt Shipley, 18519 Nathan Court. I guess I don't have much more to add than what my wife said, other than I find it odd. I don't believe in the traffic studies as well, but I would think that if I would request that a new one be done, since that was done in April 2020 when COVID was in existence and no one was going to school, no one was going to work. And I believe, well, I definitely know that was before the Sheets and the Dunkin' Donuts and the other one. I don't even know if Aldi was open at that point in time. So I think that traffic study that was done 16 months ago or 17 months ago now would be even anywhere accurate to what it should be in reality now. And as, I mean, I impressed with the comments that you guys have had, and with regard to the school issues, which is crazy, especially when I wonder what percentage of these apartments would be Section 8, where each tenant may have 3 or 4 kids that are going to be in these schools. And so I think that you're just asking for bigger problems with the schools. So.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Next on the sign-up sheet is Anna Marie Wise. Did I get that correct?
10304 Cold Harbor Drive.
Okay.
Hagerstown. I'm in the Cross Creek subdivision right there. This is like deja vu, because we were fighting apartments when they wanted to put them behind what they now have are villas behind the new RVs that sits at Offenberger on that road, because they wanted to put apartment buildings there. And the same discussion, we talked about traffic, we talked about the schools, everything. And now they just, it's exponentially worse because they've already put in, like I said, all the other developments. It's highway interchange and it's all commercial now. So that's what it should be. They took all our trees out, so we have no buffer. They call it a buffer, but it's not a buffer because they took all our trees. So they get to write a check and that's supposed to take care of it. But it doesn't help us because they didn't plan anymore. They just took them out. So we get all that. We hear all the traffic. Still, and this was brought up the last time, all the surrounding roads around us are 2-lane country roads. That's what they are. Poffenberger, Wrench. All those, and once you get beyond Poffenberger, heading south towards Sharpsburg, excuse me, it's 2-lane road again, going out to the battlefield and whatever. So it's really Like I said, deja vu, talking about the same things, roads haven't changed, more traffic, more businesses. It's just ridiculous, ludicrous to think about putting apartment buildings there. And all due respect, Mr. Klein, I don't know if you live in that area, but maybe you should come visit. But, because we're there and we live it every day.
What's your address again?
10304 Cold Harbor Drive in Hagerstown, and I'm in the Cross Creek. It's just a small little development. And like I said, they've done the infrastructure, but they haven't actually started to build 150 single
1 minute
family
remaining.
starter homes, by the way, behind Claggett's Mill, which will be using Puffenberger. They just redid that beautiful stone bridge. It's gorgeous. You used to walk there. I used to walk from my house all the way up to alternate 40. You can't walk that road anymore. You can't. There's just too much traffic. And these people are nuts. Now we have to fight because it's a one-way just to get people just to not just come running over the bridge because you're supposed to yield, but they don't. They just keep on coming. So it's really, I used to walk Wrench Road. Can't do that anymore either. There's just no place anymore to get out of the neighborhood because it's just too much.
Sure. Yeah, you got.
So the traffic concern is not getting out to Route 70, it's going down on Puffenberger Road out to alternate
Well,
40?
70 is a whole different thing. But you had two failed interchanges that have been failed even before they built the Walmart, because that was brought up when we did the whole traffic study, when they put the Walmart. You still have failed interchanges. All they did was put in another lane on the off ramp or on the on ramp. But once you get out to the highway, you still have, you're on and then your exit, and you only got about so many car lengths, and then boom, you're hitting traffic when they're coming at you at 78 miles an hour. There's still failed interchanges. So it's nothing much has really changed since before the Walmart. And now they're talking about apartment buildings. It's ludicrous.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Everyone wise? I'm doing all right. Can you state your name and address for the?
Kevin Wines, 10304 Cold Harbor Drive, same as Anne Marie. Pretty much she said most of what I wanted to say, but one thing I definitely wanted to say was ever since they cut this Colonel Douglas Drive through, it was supposed to have a sign that said no through traffic. Well, we have people in wheelchairs and everything else in our neighborhood and some handicapped kids. And now what we do is get a lot of the traffic trying to cut across, and they're coming through our neighborhood at 50, 55 mile an hour, running stop signs. Somebody's going to get killed in our neighborhood. I mean, it's a real bad.
Coming through the neighborhood to go where?
They're trying to cut across, I guess, the Poffenberg, I guess is what they do, but they come up to our intersection, just run the stop sign. They never even slow down at the stop sign. We have a gentleman in a wheelchair. He's out there every day, and sooner or later, somebody's going to run into him. And basically, where they're talking about doing the apartments, that used to be about a 13 acre or 19 acre, 9 acre, whatever it is, buffer. It used to have wildlife in it. It had deer, it had turkeys, it had abundant, birds. And it was a buffer, so we didn't hear all the development that's going on out on, 65. And also, I don't know if y'all noticed, but for like the last 5 years out there on 65, all those houses out in front that are abandoned, now we have homeless people sitting on the street now with shopping carts, living in these abandoned houses that are owned by these developers who have bought these houses and haven't had them torn down, don't cut the grass, and nothing's done about that. Now, I or you had that in our neighborhood, we'd be fine. We'd have a lien and clean against our
1 minute remaining.
tax. So I really think the county ought to look into this and tear these houses down and get these people out of the neighborhood. And that's all up and down that corridor that they're going to develop, But that's basically what I have to say. I think it's the wrong place to put an apartment. We have plenty of plenty of development and plenty of houses. And I don't think it's needed there because across the street, they were going to do the same thing. They put the villas there when they did Walmart. So,
All right. Thank you, sir.
thanks.
Next, we have Jeff Bowers.
Yes, one guy already touched base.
Hang on. Can you state your name and address for the record?
Jeff Bowers, 10401 Bear Creek Drive.
All right, go right ahead.
I already touched base. I know when they build these places, there's laws out there, and when they said it's Section 8, nobody wants to say how many of them are going to be Section 8. There's laws that automatically, so many of them's got to be Section 8. And with all due respect, this guy back here said that they need places for these people to live. In our area, most of the people work down the road. They get on 70, that's why they're living there. They work where they used to live, and then they travel up the road. These people work in these warehouses, half of them ain't even from Hagerstown. They live someplace else. Because around Hagerstown, I've lived here 60 years. Half of Hagerstown don't work now. So nobody needs any place to live. I know where they're coming from. They're coming up the road to live cheaper and travel back down the road. And that's what it's all about.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Chris Umps. You could state your name and address for the record, please.
It's Chris, 18326 Ranch Road, Hagerstown, 21740. So I'm just around the corner. Sorry, I got my notes on my phone.
Sure.
So I'm a teacher, so I'm glad you guys have brought up the issues with the schools. School capacity. You're talking about school in the time of a pandemic when we're trying to space kids out as much as possible to keep them safe. And you're talking about overcrowding as an issue. Half the furniture in my classroom was gone last year just to make room for kids. And we're talking about Section 8. I've heard mentioned. You talk about the impact on a school that doesn't even take into effect the enrollment. You're talking, how does that impact a school like Rockland Woods that is more affluent? I would say, you put different types of kids in there, it changes the dynamic completely. I haven't heard mentioned the apartments on the other side of the road, because I know there's supposed to be, it was in the paper, whether that's still on the docket or not, the apartments and townhomes that are in between the villas and Walmart. I don't know if that's in their studies or not. Going back to schools, just because that's kind of where I'm at with it. Roads are going to come regardless, I have a feeling, but you're talking about a school budget that's not funded 100% anyway. So you're talking about money there. How are we going to teach these kids if, even if they do come, how are we going to teach them if the budget isn't, being funded? Talk about road, traveling up and down that road. I had two of my girls in the car the other day, and we just about got hit and that was in a turn lane. Just because people don't pay attention, they fly up and down. Gentleman just talked about homeless people. I experienced that along Ranch Road right there. The very first house on the road, Sharpsburg right side. And I had a guy sleep in my car, one night. And then, my wife goes out the house and he was sleeping on the porch the next day. These are the things that we're kind of dealing with on that end of the county. I know the hotel was mentioned, that doesn't impact schools. And I'm glad you brought it up, but I appreciate that as well. I guess the bottom line for me, I know the case law was mentioned or whatever, and, you guys kind of waffle, I don't know the ins and outs of you guys' jobs, but I feel like, at least on our end of the county, things are always done after the fact. And we need to be proactive instead of reactive. If I have a child that I hit my school with,
I'll give you 10 seconds.
flip a desk, I can't go back and change that behavior, but you guys can change what could happen. If that makes any sense.
Understood.
But thank you.
Got you. Thank you.
Can I ask Joe a question?
Sure.
So that brings up a good point. School capacity would have been calculated before 2020. Do you know, or can you find out if because of expanded space necessary for kids, will school capacities be recalculated? That's actually a good point.
Not at this point. School capacities are based upon not just learning space, but also the amount of space needed for your libraries, your gymnasiums, your auditoriums, any other amenities that are needed depending upon the level of the school district. So I'm not going to sit here and claim to know all of those little variables that go into it. The school board is the one who calculates those numbers based upon specific criteria from the Maryland Board of Education. So I'm going to say at this point, no, I don't think that we foresee this as a long-term issue. They are looking at things like remote teaching. That may become, bricks and mortar may become irrelevant in the future. We just don't know. But at this point in time, based upon the trends that we're seeing, no, we're not taking into account larger classrooms or anything like that for the spacing that we're seeing kind of in this very short-term pandemic.
So the other question I have, and you don't have to answer it right now, but the traffic studies that were done, when we talked about traffic, and I said I didn't see a problem with that, and I want to apologize because I didn't mean to be misleading, but my thoughts were traffic getting out onto 65 to 70 is a primary issue. And some folks have brought up, this is a really good point. You've got people ripping down through, and I'm really sensitive to this, so you've got people ripping down through residential neighborhoods to get out the back way over to Poffenberger Road. Was that looked at? Was that part? Because it seems to me like with a traffic study, we're interested in people getting out on the main roads and out onto the highway. And from what I've heard tonight, that's not so much the issue as all the people trying to avoid all that and go out the back way on country roads that weren't built for that.
So I'm going to defer to Rebecca Calamer, who is in our plan review office. Rebecca is the one who deals with the traffic impact studies and has reviewed that, and she has more information on that than I have.
So why don't we get through the rest of the
Okay.
resident?
Sorry, I just wanted,
No,
while I
that's
was thinking
right.
about
That's
it, I wanted to bring that
No,
up.
but and it's okay to note it, but we'll get through this and then we can handle that so after the. Okay, perfect. I have one more on the list, Pat K.
Hello, I'm
Hi.
Pat Kay. I live at 10408 Bear Creek Drive. First of all, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate you guys taking the time and letting us voice our opinions. I wrote a letter, so it's probably on file somewhere, and everything that I said in the letter has already been discussed tonight. The reason that I signed to speak was because I thought of other things that I didn't put in my letter. And first one, I'd like to reiterate the highway interchange mess that, we've been talking about traffic. Nobody's really addressed that to get on 70, you've got to cross the traffic. You have to go across traffic. It's just ridiculous. There's been so many, there have been accidents. I can't believe there's not been more, but near misses, and just getting back off of 70 is a mess. Whoever did that, they should have just done a clover. And I know that they talked about that and then they didn't do it. And it's just, even when they finish the bridge, it's just an accident waiting to happen, and it's not getting any better. So that was something I thought of as I came in. Secondly, regarding traffic, when that Walmart was built, that road was supposed to, Wrench Road was gonna be closed, right? Probably where Mr. Ohms is living. They were gonna close that like they did at Poffenberger on the other side. They were gonna close it and redirect traffic up to Wrench Road, higher up, behind where you go by the new villas that have been built, and that's not been done. So right now, if you've ever tried to take a left off of Wrench Road under Sharpsburg Pike at 4 o'clock when the prison gets out, it's not happening. And 4 o'clock anytime of any day of the week, 4 o'clock coming down Sharpsburg Pike, whether you're coming from picking your kid up at school or coming home from work or whatever. It's just crazy. It's crazy. There's no way we should be putting new homes in there until we get that all straightened out. I happen to live in the neighborhood.
1 minute remaining.
Proposed building 2 would be right about here. And I walk our neighborhood when it was built, the developer didn't put sidewalks in. Instead, they put walking paths that border our neighborhood, and they're very nice and they're tree covered, whatever. But now since they did all that, Colonel Douglas Drive and everything, that buffer is gone. Those trees are gone. So our walking path, I could see in the windows of people getting Dunkin' Donut in the morning. And it says a 50-yard buffer. I don't know. I don't see where they even have 50 yards between. I don't see that happening. And I'd like to know what kind of buffer, because what's going to happen is people, especially if it's apartments, there's multiple people, there's kids. We already have higher traffic of kids, people coming through our neighborhood. 3:30 in the morning, my camera caught a guy going to open my front door. Just, my doors were locked and the camera got him. He saw the camera and he took off running. Ends up 2 days later, he was arrested for armed robbery over at the Walmart parking lot. So that kind of stuff didn't happen. We've been there 21 years. We raised our 3 kids there. All 3 of our kids went through South High. And it's not at the time, maybe not ever the place, I don't know, but the support isn't that there. We need the infrastructure, we need the roads cleared up, and as a resident, I'd like to, if they're gonna have to do that, we need more of a buffer than that, because, and walking my dog down the street, because we don't have sidewalks on the street, but people cutting through, trying to get to Poffenberger Road. I can't tell you how many times I've almost been hit. Pull my dog out of the road.
All right. Thank you. That was.
That was me.
Yeah, that was you. That's
Thanks,
okay.
sir. I do
Thank
appreciate
you.
this. Thanks.
So I've gone through everyone who signed up. Was there anyone else here who did not sign up but wishes to speak? Okay. We have the applicant. The applicant has 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Yeah, I'll touch base on the traffic first, and then we'll go through some of the other concerns as it relates to the design and layout of the development. So the traffic impact study, which was approved by both Washington County and Maryland State Highway, was approved in 2020, like was presented earlier. It is valid for 3 years from the date of that approval. So that approval is good until 2023. The traffic leaving this site generally travels north towards the interstate and Interstate 70 and up in that direction. The traffic traveling south through Poffenberger Road, we have a distribution in the traffic impact study that shows where the traffic is going and where it's coming from. I don't have that copy with me tonight, but the copy that was presented to the Washington County and State Highway details where that traffic is coming from and where it is going. The buffer that was brought up several times, there was actually a 30-foot wide sanitary sewer easement that runs along the eastern and southern boundary lines. That easement is owned and maintained by Washington County for an 8-inch force main line. So there cannot be any vegetation or structures within that 30 feet. The additional 20 feet to get to the 50-foot wide buffer prohibits any structures within that setback. So the buildings that we're showing there on this plan are either at or beyond that 50-foot buffer. So that is the intent of that buffer yard. Also, regarding the road improvements, most of these road improvements are developer paid for, developer driven. Whenever these traffic impact studies are presented to the county and to state highway, the county and the state recommend improvements to the local roads, at which all are paid for by local developers. Very rarely are they publicly funded through taxpayer money. And so any upgrades that are necessary in this vicinity would be paid for by developers through development.
Can I ask a question? Your traffic impact study, does it take into consideration, and we had talked about earlier, there's the service road, for lack of a better term, and then there's the second access to the Sharpsburg Pike, which is intended for a light? Does your traffic impact study take into consideration a stoplight being there?
Correct, it does.
Okay.
Yes.
Because it seems very short when you go from Poffenberger to now there, to now Colonel Douglas Drive, to now, right, the ramps on 70, and it's not a very wide span down.
And they had to meet certain spacing requirements.
Okay.
And so this proposed signal was going about halfway between Poffenberger and Colonel H.K. Douglas Drive.
Okay.
So you mentioned it was approved in April of 2020.
Correct.
When was it conducted?
I do know. It was conducted May 29, 2019. So prior to COVID.
No, I'm sorry. There's no, I'm sorry. Oh, Rebecca, I'm sorry. I thought there was somebody behind you. Hey, Rebecca, guess what? You could ask a question.
Yeah, so basically the approved traffic study in this case, the counts would have been taken pre-COVID. And it would have had a background growth, and a build out date, that kind of thing. We had very few studies that we've allowed counts for during COVID, just for you all's awareness.
Yeah,
And those counts were looked at very closely. So, but this would have been based on data when school was in session, not during COVID.
However, Duncan, Aldi, the other Sheets commercial facilities would not have been a part of that study.
They would have been.
They would have been projected.
Correct.
Right, and anticipated. But the actual count of what's potentially going through this neighborhood to Poffenberger to go over to alternate 40 would be an estimate because everything's anticipated to go this way. But that may not be actually what's happening.
That's correct.
Is that fair?
That's fair.
So it was an estimate and a anticipation of where the traffic would come from and go, but the actual outcomes may be different when we consider this.
Sure.
I have a question. It seems to me like if we're going to make a zoning change, the reason to make a zoning change is that it would be changing to be better for the community. My question is, if we change this zoning, how is this better for anyone other than your applicant?
Well,
Because the roads are already a mess, we don't have school capacity, and obviously the neighbors don't really want it to happen. So why would we change the zoning? It seems like it's only good for one group of people, and it's not good for everybody else around it.
I disagree with that. It would add money to the tax base.
That we can't afford to get enough taxes for to upgrade the schools.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part.
Like everybody throws that out. Let's grow, let's grow, let's grow. But then we always have the same problem. We grew, but there isn't enough money to fix the roads and the schools and everything after it's done.
Yeah, let me
Do you guys see my point?
Yeah, so I'm not sure the tax base is necessarily a good argument when you talk about residential tax base versus a commercial use tax base, right? So it depends on what you put in there, and where the taxes are ran and where they're calculated. I guess my concern would be, and I thought about this, and I think you indicated that as a hotel, the traffic study says this much traffic. As a residential use, it said less traffic. Is that what you said earlier? The challenge that I would throw into that, though, is commercial traffic may go in a very different direction than a residential traffic would. Give you an example of what I mean. If this is a hotel, and quite frankly, I'm not sure I'd want a hotel in 50 yards from a buffer either when you talk about a 7 or 8 story Marriott with bright lights, but traffic coming from a hotel is definitely going to go to Sharpsburg Pike. Traffic coming from this neighborhood could very easily be going the other way, right? And especially if you've got a berm down the middle of Sharpsburg Pike, here's potentially an increase as to what happens. If you can't get to Colonel Douglas, right, you're going out the back, you're coming around, and you're going straight up to Sharpsburg Pike off of Poffenberger Road, which could potentially create more traffic circling through their neighborhood. Residentially, they could be coming out, they could be going left and going towards alternate 40 on Poffenberger Road. And when you get to that 1-lane bridge, I don't know who I need to talk to at the county, but I travel that bridge. Those trees on the creek need to be cut back so you can see the other side, because it is terrible trying to see coming across there, especially when cars are flying down the hill, and oh yeah, it's a mess.
You got the pain in the butt farmer on top of that.
Yeah. I mean, so there are challenges, I guess, that I would put to, I understand a residential use is going to decrease traffic usage. That's going to be natural, but it also could be a very different traffic flow.
That's true.
Which is a concern.
And I'm not going to discount the fact that bringing residents in I'm still going to stick by that tax base argument. If you have people in here, they're living and working, hopefully in the area. If they're working down the road, they're at least bringing their income back to the county. I see that as a benefit.
That's fair.
The hotel is you're absolutely right that if we're looking at sort of a hotel versus apartments, that traffic is different. But we've also got permitted uses in the HI district that include hospitals, labs, sheet metal shops, so to the extent that there are permitted uses on this site right now that could potentially be making that left-hand turn to go home down to Rockland Woods, or making that turn to get back because they happen to find a great house in the Cross Creek development in the Carriage Hill, I think it is next door.
That'd be great. They may be walking and you wouldn't have
you could walk there, and then you could walk to Aldi and get your coffee and everything there. So, I certainly, I certainly take that thought and that observation into account, but I don't think that some of those concerns are alleviated or just washed away by denying this MXC. I think you could still get them, but just based on the principal permitted uses in the HI district, which again include all uses in the BL, BG, PB, and ORT, with a few exceptions. I don't think you can have helipads or vet kennels with dog runs in it. So, not everything, but I think, again, you see only sort of the negatives of this MXC overlay, but at the same time, I don't, again, think those are really alleviated just by denying this MXC overlay.
So I've got another issue that was kind of touched on, and you don't have to respond to it right now. Maybe it's more site plan issue, but there have been numerous reports in the newspaper lately about the crime in that part of town and the drug use and the selling of drugs and things like that, which isn't your problem, but it's a thing. It's out there.
Sure.
So you have 100 or so apartments, and if there's a couple of kids in each apartment, so we have maybe 200, 300, 400 kids in that area. What do they do when they're not in school? Where are they going? We looked at these things before. The open space to me is an issue.
Well,
And again, you don't have to resolve that now, but I'm just, that's going to be an issue for me in the site plan.
whereas Trevor and I would have been out like exploring the buffer area, I think kids these days, there's an argument to me that they sit in on their devices and aren't going to go anywhere.
Or they set out and paint
Maybe
graffiti
that's-
over the
maybe that's
buildings.
because
and
we build things without places for them to go out.
Yeah.
Well, anywhere,
Or no, or they out selling drugs
They're
and
not
using
legally
drugs and
allowed
painting
in the wastewater
graffiti.
management pond, correct? So you guys call that
Correct.
open space, but there's kids aren't.
no, we didn't call the wastewater management pond open space.
And we had this with before is, they can't really go play on the school ground because the school ground's across Route 70. So, you can't just walk there like when we were kids. So that's a concern to me is, okay, you bring in this population and now are we just creating a disaster even worse than what we have? Just a question. I'm just throwing it
Yeah,
out.
and Trevor calculated a couple acres of outdoor space on this, and if there's opportunity in the site plan, it certainly will be touched on there if it gets back before the thing. Yeah.
This is a no-win any way you look at it. I mean, for the folks that live in that area, I mean, this has been a long time in the making of just probably the greatest statement was proactive versus reactive. And it feels like in this, going back to when the interchange was actually put in, I was a kid and I remember before the outlets were built and then everything that came with that. And it's been a long time of reactive things. And I mean, I come back to from a site standpoint, from all of those things, what the developer is trying to do makes complete sense. But then, what the public is experiencing. I mean, I travel across that road fairly regularly across Poffenberger because I live on the other side off of alternate 40. And, it is, that whole road, Jeremiah, you're farming all of it around there. And it's just been a challenge in the making for a long time. I don't know.
Sure, it certainly has changed the area, and you guys know better than I do sitting here. But yeah, I do think that this MXC overlay is sort of that proactive step. It gets a concept plan before staff and the planning commission before I even show up. We've got another bite at the apple here tonight where the residents get a chance to, or the neighbors and everyone in the area gets a chance to voice their concerns and opinions. And, they have a bunch of hurdles to clear, and this is only the second out of, I think, 5 potentially. So,
And just if I may make one more comment for the public purposes, the reason that I asked about the case law is because, to some extent, I mean, we may be dictated on what we can do now based on historical case law and precedents that have been set. We have to evaluate those things and look at those things as well. So,
Well, in my opinion, the real issues are out of your hands and they're out of our hands.
and they're out of
That's out of your hands.
I agree with
cars
that 100%.
cars ripping through a residential neighborhood to find a back way out. That needs to be resolved anyway. That needs to be addressed, and I don't think that's addressed through your site plan or through the planning commission. But that's an issue, and it's outside the purview of this.
sure, anecdotally, I can tell you the number of my buddies in high school who went over to Wrench Road from Smithsburg because that's where the good road was to race. And I drive 25 miles an hour everywhere, so that wasn't me. But it could be some different. You're exactly right. There are some concerns there, and I would encourage anyone who has a public safety concern. I know the city mayor and council did a walkthrough and everything, and would encourage them to reach out to the sheriff's department and local leadership because that's how you're going to get that fixed. And
Well, you can make roads one way.
to the extent that there's some things that can be done
Speed
outside
bumps.
of the plan. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
there are things that can be done to slow people down and to deter traffic, but that's not part of your proposal. But there's things that needs to be addressed.
It's not even in their purview to be able to do it.
Right. I'm not a fan of the interchange either. And
Right.
I'm with it. I'm with everyone who had that concern, but we're here on a 9-acre parcel and trying to doing the best we can with with building the roads to county and state highway standards. And we're going to have to deal with the adequacy issue isn't going to go away.
Right.
If it could go away tomorrow if the Board of Ed and county commissioners were to decide something. But again, it's an issue for us, and it's certainly not going to go away. I don't think anytime in the near future. But
Challenge for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that
thank you.
presentation. Do we want to hear from Rebecca about your traffic question? I kind of delayed it to the end, pushed it to the end.
Yeah, my question was during the traffic study, to what degree did they study,
The redistribution of traffic.
yeah, out the back way, out Poffenberger Road?
Well, there would have been no way to do it.
Okay. But to me, a traffic study, they would have been looking at traffic primarily going out to 70 out onto, that's primarily what they would have looked at. But, we're learning tonight that's, the real issue is something else.
Right. Yeah, and that is the traffic studies looking at the level of service of the intersections currently with background traffic, with ultimate, total development.
And when we looked at this area before, they were talking about continuing out to Wrench Road and closing that off, and all these things were going to happen. When is that going to happen? What's the time frame?
They never said that was gonna happen because they don't own the land.
Correct.
The Arts family owns that land, and they
Okay.
said go
Correct.
grind sand. It's not gonna happen.
Okay.
So that was never.
So that was proposed, but
Yeah.
it never got anywhere.
I think it's something ultimately, long-term.
Right.
But I don't think
It
there's
took 40 years to get Southern.
Because, yeah, that was presented as something that was supposed to happen.
Part of the county's master plan to do, but you'll note that with these kind of roads, it's how Zach had mentioned, they're developer driven. The county doesn't just build roads, to open up land or anything like that. So it's typically developer driven. So at this point, the Arts family has chosen not to develop it until
Gotcha.
such time that, so the developers of the Walmart and the rest of that property have actually built Wrench Road up to the edge of their property. They've done their due diligence in putting their section of the road in. It's the next property over now has to decide to develop to get the rest of that. Arnett Drive. Yeah, thank you.
If you want to tick a farmer off so they won't sell you their ground, build your road right up to the property line.
All right,
They
everybody.
will not talk to you until they die.
That concludes the public rezoning information hearing this evening. Thank you all for attending. We're going to move on to our regular hearing now. Our regular hearing, the Washington County Planning Commission regularly scheduled August 30th, 2021 meeting comes to order. The first item on the agenda this evening are the minutes, August 2nd, 2021, Planning Commission regular meeting minutes. I'll give everyone a moment here to.
A couple hundred people.
All right, so we have the August 2nd minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those? If so, are there any recommended changes? And if not, you're looking for a motion. Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Next item, under new business, we have site plans, the Royal Farms store number 387. This is SP-20-019, proposed site plan for a convenience store with gas pumps on 3 acres located along the east side of Greencastle Pike. Zoning is highway interchange, and Lisa Kelly's the planner. Good evening, Lisa.
Is there someone here for that? Aha, okay. All righty. Are you?
I'm a chief kosher from Kinley Horn. We're the engineer of record
Okay.
on plans. I'm the PE who signed the plans.
Okay.
Great.
I wasn't sure which one you were.
Welcome. Thanks for your patience.
It was interesting.
As mentioned, presented as a site plan for Royal Farms convenience store on French Lane. I don't have a diagram to put up on a board, but you all have, I believe, your own copies. You can kind of look at the site as I discuss it. As mentioned, the subject site is located along the east side of Greencastle Pike, adjacent to the existing pilot. Zoning is HI. Highway interchange, as you know, it's just north of the I-70 interchange there with Greencastle Pike. Developers proposing to construct a convenience store and gas pumps on a 3-acre site. Store will be approximately 4,500 square feet in size with an outside eating area and gas pumps. There will be 2 access points onto the site from French Lane, one to the side and one to the rear. Parking required is 54 spaces and 61 spaces will be provided. Public water and sewer will service the site. Hours of operation will be 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and 6 employees are projected throughout the day. Freight and delivery will be on an as-needed basis. Lighting will be attached to the building and pole mounted, and lighting will also be located on the gas campus. There will be one pylon sign located along the front of the property bordering Greencastle Pike. And also there will be building mounted signs to be used. Landscaping will be in the bioretention ponds adjacent to the building and along the southern property line. And the developer is proposing to pay the payment in lieu in the amount of $9,408.96. All the approving agencies have approved, except I need to finalize with 1 or 2 agencies who had no problem bringing the plan here tonight. They're just taking care of some last minute things. And with that, I have nothing to add unless we have any questions. And Kim is also here. If you have questions, on him. This has been around for a good while, what, about a year? Yeah, a little over a year. So they've been working through a lot of issues with the agency. So we're luckily just now to the point where we can get it ready and wrap it up so they can get on their way with getting permits and such.
All right, any questions? Straightforward. You're looking for a motion with staff approval, correct?
Yes. Yes. Correct.
You say we're looking for a motion for staff to approve?
Yeah, with staff approval on the remaining agencies.
I'll make a motion to allow for staff approval for the remaining agencies.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. And then right back with forest conservation. The first item is Royal Farm Store 387. This is SP-20-019 again. Request for removal of 2 specimen trees from property located at 11532 French Lane. Zoning is highway interchange, and Travis Allen is the
So yes, this is kind of one of the remaining issues hanging out there for this same site plan that you saw. They are requesting a variance to remove 2 specimen trees. You'll recall that specimen trees are prioritized for retention under Article 8 of the Forest Conservation Ordinance, so you have to seek a variance under Article 15. Amongst the things that they need to demonstrate for these variances states in Article 15 that the planning commission may grant a variance where owing to special feature of the applicant's property or other circumstances, the standards or requirements of the ordinance would result in unwarranted hardship to the applicant. They must also demonstrate that the request meets the intent of the forest conservation ordinance and the relief wouldn't affect water quality. So in this particular case, in terms of the specific facts of this case, the two specimen trees that are located on site are actually invasive trees. They're Norway maples, which if you're familiar with those, they're attractive trees, but they are invasive trees. They're very prolific in their seed dispersal. So they are an invasive species. As pointed out in the applicant's justification letter, they have a shallow root system, so there's potential for runoff from rain on the property with them being there. We'd also point out too that the existing forest on site is of a pretty low quality. It's basically an early stage pioneer forest. So both the actual forest stand that's there and these trees are all kind of this early pioneer stage that doesn't offer a lot the site as it's situated now anyway. So they are requesting to remove these two specimen trees.
Any questions? Go ahead.
This isn't really a question. This is just a statement, I guess. You can bring every Norway maple to me and I will tell you to take it out. Okay. My question is why in the world are we calling these things specimen trees? I mean, we could call an ailanthus a specimen tree if it meets the diameter. These are ridiculous statutes. We've wasted your time and you've wasted our time. I mean, that's just the long and the short of it. And I'm not attacking you at all, Travis. You did your job exactly like you're supposed to. But somebody needs to change these stupid rules. I mean, that's just the long and the short of it.
Weed grows big enough.
I'm not wrong here. I mean, am I not allowed to say those things?
You're doing great.
Look, definitely
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you come here with a white oak of 48-inch diameter or something, I might listen to you. But a Norway maple, I mean, we had a black chair or an ash that was already dead come to us a couple weeks ago. Okay, I probably made a ridiculous.
This is something that gets hashed over from time to time. Not maybe this specific thing, but what always seems to kind of come up periodically is what's the threshold for staff level approvals, and then what needs to come to us. This sort of kind of comes back and forth, and goes one way and then it goes the other way and then it goes back the other way. And this is just one of those kind of examples, right? I mean, this is probably one of those things that's just been determined needs to come forward and can't be decided at the staff level, although it probably could be, just
In the staff's defense, they don't have the ability to change it anyway.
Yeah,
They're just following the rules that they're told
And
to do.
again, Travis, I don't mean, I haven't had a great week. Couple deaths in my family, but I mean,
Yeah.
We required, because of the ordinance, and I'll never forget this, we required some folks up on the mountain, in the middle of the mountain, South Mountain, to plant some, what are those? They're not really the pine trees.
Saplings.
Yeah, is it like a visual buffer? No,
Leyland cypress.
Leyland cypress,
yes.
right.
Oh, the cypress.
Remember that because the ordinance required it. And there, nobody around up on the mountain, in the middle of the mountain, and they wanted to expand their business or whatever. We made them plant trees.
I move we cut these trees down.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So carried. Take it back. All right. Next under Forest Conservation, we have Big Spring Solar LLC. This is SP-21-021. Request for on-site forest mitigation for Big Spring Solar located at 11505 Ashton Road. The zoning is agricultural rural. And Travis Allen is the planner yet again. You okay?
I won't say anything this time, Travis. Go.
All right, as mentioned, this relates to a site plan for Big Spring Solar. I'm told by other members of staff that it is already a staff approval site plan. That's why you haven't seen it come before. It's just a modification to an existing site plan that I think has already gained approval. located at 11505 Ashton Road. Total acreage involved in the lease area is 24.19 acres. In this case, they are looking to establish an off-site easement in order to meet their forest mitigation requirements. The site plan is for a 2 megawatt community solar project. They have already gained a special exception for this project back in 2015 from the Board of Zoning Appeals. So this particular request relates to Article 10, the preferred sequence of mitigation of the Forest Conservation Ordinance, which describes the preferred sequence of techniques for mitigating forest conservation, ranging from on-site retention or planting down to eventually the bottom technique being the payment in lieu of option when there's no other options available. The intent of the ordinance, of course, is to either retain or create as much forest on site before moving it off site to another watershed or elsewhere in the county. So that's, in this case, why we bring that before the planning commission to decide upon. Off-site retention being kind of a less preferred option in this. So in support of this request, you have my memo, which summarizes it. You have a page from the site plan that kind of shows the overall look at the project site and the lease area. You have the forest conservation plan, which notes where they're intending the request to put the easement off-site and justification letter from a qualified professional. So in terms of the specifics of this project, you'll note on the site plan that there is no existing qualified forest on the development site at this time. We'd also note that the location where they're intending to put this easement is within 3 miles of the development site. So sometimes we get requests that, we have a project in Hagerstown and they want to put it, out in Hancock, but this is actually probably not exactly within the exact same watershed as a project, but, probably the next one over. I think it's in the Antelope Creek watershed. That is a priority for soil conservation in some of their programs. So they also mentioned in the letter that there's some steep slopes on the place where they're going to put the easement on it. So it would offer a number of benefits in terms of the location they're actually looking to move the forest easement to. And of course, as pointed out in the letter, they mentioned the fact that, obviously this is a lease area from a farmer. And again, you have no existing forest on site. So you'd be encumbering the farmer with planting forest on site, getting a bond, doing all that kind of thing with something that really isn't technically directly affiliated with the project itself. So again, in this case, the request is to establish the off-site easement.
Do they use forest banking on this or not?
They always can, but again, forest banking this day and age is a specific term where they have legally set up a bank ahead of time. And right now, the county doesn't actually have any technically legal forest banks remaining. We have some de facto banks, the one out in Hancock that people have been using. And then that actually has been made more difficult by recent state legislation, which is kind of making it look like we're not going to be able to set up forest retention banks anymore. They're all going to have to be planting banks to put under easement in the future, which is going to make it even more difficult to do it from a legal forest banking standpoint. It'll probably have to move more towards what we see Mr. Bowman and some of the other developers doing, where they just kind of establish offsite easements like this versus setting up an actual forest bank.
So we approved like 2 or 3 in the last couple of years, forest banking. They're already used up too.
We have the only ones that were legally established were Fred Frederick's one out there on Searfoss Pike. That one has already been used up through various projects. And then the original one was from Mike Schiffler.
Correct.
That also is technically it's not used up yet, but it's spoken for in an existing development project that's nearing conclusion, and all of that will have been used up. So at this point, we just don't really have a lot to offer people, and it's honestly kind of a problem.
That Shetron property, I mean, it's not legally set up as a bank, but she has 50 acres that this will be the second portion of it that she sold off. And going off site, we're doing 2 to 1.
Right.
I don't have a problem with this. It would be counterproductive to plant a bunch of trees over top of the solar cells, I guess. So,
Or take more land from the farmer who's renting the rest of the property.
makes perfect sense.
All right, then we would just look for.
I would move to approve.
Legislation that Travis mentioned, to me, is ridiculous. that you're gonna make somebody plant whips and use that for your forest easement instead of going to someplace like Shetron, where it's 2-to-1 stream bank slopes with mature, nice trees on it that you're gonna save.
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah.
the legislation just seems backwards to me.
I get it. I think that makes more sense too.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, we got a motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carrie, I agree with you. I do. I think that's the way to go.
Thanks.
Right. Under other business, we have update for staff approvals. Rebecca Kelly. Rebecca, I'm sorry. I couldn't see through Zach. I thought it was somebody behind you, like just chiming in, and they were chomping at the bit to chime in. And so I was like, no.
Asked me if I wanted to come up and speak to the traffic first. I said, you go ahead.
Right. Right. They're gonna do it. Sit on the back and listen.
Yeah. Good evening. You should have received the plan review active projects list this morning, so my apologies for that. I got it on the calendar now, so it'll come out the week before for the next meetings. So we continue to be very busy. It looks like 3 concept plans, 1 stormwater concept plans, 1 forest stand delineation, 6 inspection maintenance agreements, 2 PWAs, simplified plat, 3 site plans, 2 site-specific grading plans, 3 standard plans, 2 subdivision replats, 4 traffic studies initialized, and a type 2 grading plan. Permits continues to be very busy as well. I'm not sure about these numbers. Honestly, I haven't looked at these reports in great depth. And after looking at it this morning, I intend to do that before I run the next one. If you're looking at non-residential additional alteration permit and it says 2, I'm not sure where that number comes from because I pulled the query from the system and it had 18. So I might have a look over this before we have to go at it next meeting.
That's fair.
So,
We won't beat you up.
any questions?
Well, yeah, I have a general question. This is a question that I've had in the past, specifically about this report. A long time ago, we got this report out with the packet. And then we started getting it a few days before. From a staff perspective, would it be, and I've always kind of wondered because this one is like 8/1 through 8/27. Would it be easier to run the 15th to the 15th to update us? Or, it can't be efficient to try and just randomly choose a date because the meeting's fallen on this date. We don't need to put it in the packet anymore. I don't know if cutting it on the 15th and running 15th to the 15th of the month would be more efficient, but
It's a snapshot of a roughly recent period of time so we can see how busy.
I'm just thinking, a part of me says it'd be easier to do it on month end every month and email it out to us. But the problem is the meeting could be on the first day of the month and then, you know what I mean? I don't know. But I think,
I like the idea.
I think as a commissioner, and I won't speak for the rest of you, but my direction for the staff would be let us know what to expect that makes it efficient for you. And then we know what to expect. It works for you and we can roll forward. That'd just be my comment and suggestion. So,
Yeah, I like the idea of running it.
well, it seems like we're getting it kind of all over the place in the past. And I would think it would be more consistent to have cutoff timeframes, but whatever. Just a suggestion.
Sure, if there's anything else, you guys. Yeah, content wise, though, I know you've in the past, you really like these.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's great to have. I just, trying to think of it can't be efficient for you and, expectation wise for us would make sense. Just my suggestion.
Yep.
I'm fine with that.
We'll look at it.
All right, well, thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Unless there's any other questions. No. Good. Next item under other business, we have comprehensive plan update. Bill Baker.
Good evening, members. So handed out to you this evening, are the next couple chapters that we put together for the comprehensive plan update. Chapter 10 is our community facilities chapter. This is a required chapter per state law. I'm not going to sit and go through it tonight because, like I said, we're handing it out to you this evening for you to go over. And then chapter 11 is our historic and cultural resources chapter. I don't think this is a required chapter by state law. However, in Washington County, I think we're all very sensitive to the fact that we have a very long and rich history that we would like to incorporate into our future growth plans. So we've outlined some of those policies there in that chapter. What I would like to ask this evening is if you guys would like to have another workshop meeting similar to like we did for the last three chapters, I should say. Just in case, again, we kind of want to leave our regular meeting dates open because we just never know what we're going to get through the door and how busy your regular meeting will go. So our next date for workshop would be, Deb?
September the 13th.
Okay.
There is a 50% chance that I'll be out of town that week, or the week after is the other 50% chance. I don't know yet. How's that?
My comment would be, in light of what's in this one in the conversation that we just had, I mean, you're talking about water sewer, you're talking about schools. We should probably have one.
Yeah. I agree. Having a good idea. Can't say for sure if I'll be here.
There's 100% chance I won't be here on the 13th. Whether Travis brings us another Norway maple or not.
I hope next time he brings you like 10.
Well, I want him to bring me a 180-year-old bur oak, and then I'll stand right beside him and say, let's go, let's play the chainsaw.
Wormy chestnut, I'll take.
There you go. Yeah, I'm fine with having one. Let's go ahead and put it on the calendar.
Yeah,
I can't make any guarantees, but I won't know for another week.
What date you want?
So right now we're looking at September 13th. We have one definite no. We have a potential half a no. How does that look for everybody else?
Feels good.
Actually, I've already got it on the calendar. How did that happen?
I think
Because I sent them to
she
you
sent,
again.
she sent out a list
Thank you.
as potential.
September 13th on the calendar. So.
I have no clue.
All right. Maybe.
All depends if the corn's ready.
The other option
I'm
is just
good.
to push it to the October 4th meeting and we can talk about it during that regular meeting. That's the other option that you could have if you prefer to do that. You have any idea what's in the pipeline?
As far as plans coming,
Wait a minute.
I feel like we'll have some.
A lot.
I don't know.
Okay. That's fine.
I mean, it might be a longer night than normal, possibly, but I mean, if you want to just do it that way.
The meeting night, Dave. Yeah.
Say it again.
Just
October 4th?
Yeah, October 4th.
4th and do it
Fine.
meeting night.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't care. Either way.
You guys
They'd be here on the 4th.
make it later.
We don't have any public meetings scheduled,
Right.
so we at least don't have to worry about that at the
That's a
moment. It's just how many plans we might have coming through. So we might have one, we might have seven, I don't know. You just never know what's coming through the pipeline sometimes, so.
Would you be open to starting it a little earlier?
If need be.
6
Yeah, it's 6 or.
in the morning.
Uh,
Be all for that.
Yeah, at 6 we could do,
Well, then, let's do this. Let's just go ahead and plan for October 4th. You guys please go ahead and tentatively say 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay, and then we will be in touch with you to see what the schedule, what the agenda might look like. And if we feel like it's okay, we can, and I can be in touch with you, Clint, to go over what we're seeing.
okay.
If we feel like we can start later, we can always start later. They'll give you guys an extra hour to get dinner or,
Yeah, that'd be fine. That was
okay.
helpful.
And I think
If we
Dave
do
said he
start
was
early-
buying dinner. He's catering it.
But if we do
I
start
heard the
early-
dollar menu is, got a lot on
Squirrels
it.
are in season.
Oh,
Fried squirrels down
There we go, a little squirrel Popeye.
okay, so we'll plan on October 4th.
Okay.
We're
wrong
gonna
with that?
schedule it right now tentatively for 6 PM.
there. Gotcha.
And we'll let you know, we'll email you or whatever and let you know if we can go later.
All right.
Sounds okay to me.
Did you guys have any other questions regarding the other chapters at this point in time? I know it's a lot of information to digest. We're trying to really shorten these chapters, to be honest with you, because right now I think we're pushing 350 pages and we're trying to get that well down, if we can. So, just please take a look. If you think we're missing something, we're happy to reevaluate and add back in or anything. As you go along and you're reading it, just whatever thoughts kick in your mind, just kind of make notes and let us know.
The only thing that sticks in my mind, and it's relevant, and it's come up a couple times, is the statement in there that about when we get these zoning request changes, that development should take place where there are adequate facilities in place. I think that kind of needs to be a guiding principle for us, regardless of whatever case law says or whatever. To me, that's really important. And not just for us, but I mean, just in planning in general for the county, if adequate facilities aren't in place, but it's somewhere where growth is wanted or whatever by the county, then that needs to be addressed before people start coming in asking for zoning.
I agree.
changes all
And the
this.
comp plan is where we try to find that balance because, people were speaking about being proactive versus reactive. And we wholeheartedly agree that there's only so much you can do in terms of being proactive.
Right.
For example, you don't build a school and wait for it to fill up. You don't build a road and wait for the cars to come there. So there is a very tough balance to find.
Yeah.
The water and sewer, isn't that the most important thing?
Well, I think they all have equal importance.
That
I think
intersection has been,
the bigger
that
challenge.
place has been a mess since the day they
Well,
built it. I
okay.
mean, Wendy's and all that stuff is way too close to the road, so you're limited as to how wide it's been a mess
All right, so
since the day they put
40
it.
years ago in the electric utility business, the idea was to electrify the country, and they wanted to get development. They wanted electricity in. And the way the system worked is if you build a house someplace, we would put electricity in and we would pay the bill, we would do it. And then every year we would do a rate case and we go down to the Public Service Commission and we'd say, we spent this much money, we need to raise the rates this much. And that's how the system worked. And then somebody looked at that and said, well, okay, that's fine, but you have a developer wanting to come in and do all this. It's going to cost all this to do it. Is it fair to have a grandmother on fixed income paying higher rates to pay for something that this person over here wants to do? And the rules were changed. So now if you want to develop something and you want electricity in, you pay for it up front. And that's how it works. You pay for everything. And, we'll design a job, we'll look at it and we'll run the numbers and this is what it's cost. And if it happens to cost less, you don't get a refund. This is it. And you pay that up front and then we'd start doing the work. And I think that just generally the county's got to look at that same kind of philosophy. It's not fair to raise everybody's taxes to pay for other facilities that are required because of this person that wanted to come in and make millions of dollars. Does that make sense?
I completely understand. The question then becomes how does that then become fair to, how do you fairly disperse that across the development community, right? And there are answers. There are answers.
Yeah.
Like there could be a road club. You've heard of road clubs, right? Yep. So you enter into an agreement and the county says, well, this road should be built from point A to point B. And anybody, will build it and then whoever taps onto it has to pay us a fee.
This is a bigger Maryland issue, right? But if you go to Florida, here's what happens. Florida builds a 4-lane road to nowhere,
Yeah.
and then they develop in on it. We build a 2-lane road, and then when it's overcrowded, we try to widen it. The concept in Florida is when you build the 4-lane road, now you're targeting where your development is going.
Right.
And before the developer can access that road, they have to reimburse for the road being put in. That's how you pay for the roads, and that's why you build the roads first.
Yeah.
You control where the development goes.
You got to have the money.
But this is not a county thing. I mean, this is
this is
this is much bigger and broader.
And again, and that would
Do we have
work.
the
That'll
ability
work in
to
Florida.
adjourn?
That'll work in Frederick County. I don't know that that works in Washington County.
Correct.
We don't have people beating down our doors.
No,
like
but
we
I'm
have.
but what I'm saying, my point is, we have plans to build the road, right? If you can build the road appropriately earlier, then you focus your development going there.
But
I
Dave,
understand.
but Dave's point's very well taken.
Right.
Jared can testify to what he just said completely.
That's what I was
Jared just
nodding
did a
at.
serious project and it cost him a lot of money up front. But I'm weighing Dave's point for water and sewer. I want to build a 100-unit apartment building, okay? BJ's building a house. I ought to be paying twice for the water and sewer what he's paying for that house. It should be governed. I know the tap fees and all that, blah, blah, county and city. But there should be a way that we can do this to get more revenue up front from the developers. Agreed?
Right.
There's a way, but
Is
then,
that the developers aren't the one paying for it.
well,
why?
the developers aren't.
But the
paying for it
electricity's been
long-term
doing, like Dave said, for years.
Yeah, decades.
You know?
The difference is, and my industry will take the flack on some of this, right? So to put that infrastructure in and pay that cash up front, the outlay of the cash isn't there. The bank's not going to fund it. How do you get there? That's the challenge.
Well, and the other thing, if you have an industrial park that you're building and we've
Right.
got to put a bunch of facilities in, we charge that to the developer up front. But as people come in and build in and we're starting to get revenues, we start refunding some of that back to that person that fronted it. And that's how that
Well,
works.
in other communities, they sell utility bonds and stuff like that to do it.
Well, and it's the
there's a
same
million
thing.
different ways
We
to do it.
get,
There's
you get
nothing
requests, the county gets requests all the times, and it's always the argument, this increases the tax base. Okay, charge up front, and as those taxes are paid, then,
I heard
They're
something.
never going to come back for that space.
I heard something a few years ago, that came out of the state, that our school capacity was overall as a county was trending down,
right?
And they would not fund Eastern High School, right?
Right.
Because there was always talk of Eastern High School, and I think like right before it was about to go for the funding, the studies or something didn't work. Don't quote me on that or what that is, but that's why the projection is 10 years out, because when they did whatever study, it saw a declining overall. South is over, but this Clear Spring, I mean, we're talking about closing Hancock and Clear Spring.
Right.
Well, I mean, remind me again why Hager's Crossing is coming the whole way down here when.
I didn't
So-
ever knew that. That's
I didn't either. Why asked you? I thought that's where Hager's Crossing
you
was.
said
And I'm
that, I
like,
thought.
holy cow.
Joe, right about that?
So overall,
Holy cow.
yes, that all has
That's
to
a
be
hike.
looked at. And
That's outside of our purview.
well,
Right.
not necessarily.
We're talking about
we
this.
looked
It
at
is important for us to talk about it in the comp plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I said, yeah, this is important.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If the comp plan, if we're saying that we should encourage or allow development where facilities exist, and I think you need to stick to those guns. That's what you need to do.
Well, these chapters and kind of get into it because chapter 10's going to touch on this a little bit. Right? Sure sounds like it.
We understand that the capacities are growing in our growth area. So there's a few things that, we've talked about for potential. So just to give you an example, South High is at 120% capacity. North High is 98% capacity. Williamsport's 85%. So, and, you know, feeling the pain of the Board of Ed, here's the other problem that you have. Everybody talks about redistricting,
Until
and
it's time
that
to
makes sense.
Until you do it.
Right.
Kind of like a rezoning case.
Right.
It makes sense, right? It makes
Yeah.
perfect
Yes.
sense.
Yeah, no.
But
But
selling it,
now, you know, people are going to come in and
100%.
they're going to say, but I moved here to this home because I wanted to be in this district.
Yep.
And now you're telling me I can't be there. So we have a lot of community issues to deal with. We've got a lot of
100%.
education to put out there. We've got a lot of very difficult decisions from every level of government that's out there. So that's why I said we have been thinking about these things.
Yeah.
We do understand that we can't just keep going at it, beating our heads against.
Coming back to that rezoning discussion. When it comes to site plan, or at some point, Trevor made the comment that traffic studies are good for 3 years, right?
That's the,
But would we have the ability, or will someone have the ability to say, you guys need to do a new traffic study
County commissioners.
that takes into consideration Poffenberger Road, it takes into consideration this neighborhood road off of Colonel Douglas Boulevard? I mean, would that be something that could be requested? Jill?
I'm going to make a comment and then I'm going to ask you to stop me if I'm wrong. Okay? So the assumptions that go into a traffic impact study are the estimates that you're talking about are from a national standard, right? So we estimate that restaurants will bring in X number of trips, and we estimate that,
Sure.
okay? And then you start getting into the modeling of things of what are our tractors? What are major routes? What do you think the most
So they're not
logical-
actually counting cars.
oh, they count the cars.
Yes, there's traffic counts to get the base data of what the base traffic counts are. And then new development, we add in estimates based upon these national standards. Now, there's a couple things that are going to come into play to this. Number one, for example, this property. Henry K. Douglas Drive dead ends at the very back end of Claggett.
No,
What's
it's
the name of
Carriage
that?
Hills, not Carriage
Okay.
Hills. It's the other one.
Cross Creek.
Cross Street.
There you go.
Okay, so the intention is for that road to cut the whole way over to US 40. The county doesn't have the funds to make that connection
You
right
say
now.
US 40, you mean alternate 40.
I'm
None
sorry,
of us are
hold
going to
on.
live long enough to see
So-
that happen.
Again, it's gonna be developer driven, right? So the next property over, whenever it develops, theoretically, it's supposed to make that connection. Let's take CSX out of the
I was
equation for a
gonna say,
minute.
Sure.
In that situation,
I know.
And in 2070, Henry K.
I know
Douglas
it is,
Boulevard
but
will connect
understand-
with alternate 40.
Please understand this, is so what's happening is because HK Douglas has dead-ended back there,
Oh, I know exactly.
people don't know that. They think it's a way out. And I think it'll take a few years for
No,
traffic patterns to settle out for people to not go back into there anymore.
wrong answer.
So,
What's happening is they're cutting through that neighborhood to get to Poffenberger Road, to get over to alternate 40 for Funkstown, Boonesboro, and points south and points east going to and from Walmart. It's happening.
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
So it's not that they're getting to the end of that and saying, oh crap, I don't know where I'm going now. No, they're actually using that. They're coming off of 70. They're turning left there because to hit those lights that stack up, that's exactly what's happening. What these people are talking about is real.
We had another light 100 yards down from that.
It's gonna make
Every
that
100
work.
yards will be a stoplight.
It's going to make that work.
65.
they'll all be
Because of the-
coordinated at least. So they'll be coordinated
But that-
at least.
I mean,
I agree with you. You go up that, I
I
travel
see
that
it happening
road
all the time.
Heffenburg is a disaster.
It is every day.
Well, and-
65 is. when
And-
that
and knowing
truck
that,
gets
how-
out of Prison, it's a nightmare.
Everything
Travel,
out
I
there
live
is
on
a
65.
disaster.
And again, if we follow the tenets of the comprehensive plan, how can you willingly vote to change zoning that is going to make a bad situation worse? I mean, even if the site plan, even if it's not a bad thing, if it's okay in theory or whatever, but if the reality is that adequate facilities aren't in place, then, you know, planning commissioners 10 years down the road are going to be dealing with the disasters we would be creating.
And I see the side of it, like, I farm the ground that road would have to go through to get to 40. And I
Right.
know the owner very well. And when I talked to him about it, when they like started building it back towards the creek, he said, my pockets are deep enough. I'll hold it up in court until everybody that's currently on staff will be retired. So when you have a property owner that's like, yeah, right, you think you're going to bring that road across my property? The developer in the county can say, well, our intention is that road's going to go across.
With the development as the development happens, but a developer
Yeah.
has to acquire the land.
Yeah, but if they don't own the land on the other side, I mean, at what point,
Right.
Jill, can they do eminent domain?
The
Cool.
county would have to.
But they'll never do it.
I was going to say, you're talking, realistically, not going to happen.
When did the
So-
plans for Southern Boulevard get developed? I'm pretty sure it was before I was born. And they just opened that, what, 3 years ago? I mean,
So I think we should be very careful, like when you have people from a community talking about their concerns, like we should never say, well, it's the county's intention for that road to go through, because those people, I mean, they might be dead before that road ever goes through. And
That doesn't mean we shouldn't plan for it. That's
Right.
all
well,
I'm saying.
100% I agree with
That's all I'm
that.
saying
Right,
is
but-
that I agree with you, okay, what you said earlier.
But
You want to tick off a property owner who doesn't want
Put a
development, build
yeah.
a road right up to their property and
Yeah.
go hold out.
eventually the plan sometime is to
Right.
build that road the whole way through there.
So what you have to do
Problem
in the
is in the
meantime,
meantime,
Mhm.
and that's,
Right.
you know, a study of what's actually going on there, because in 2019, Aldi wasn't open. I mean, none of that was there. So the traffic, you avoid all those lights by cutting through that neighborhood, coming in on the backside of HK and turning into Aldi, and you go out the same way. Anything from the Boonesboro side of it.
Well, HK,
I struggle because
Huh?
HK wasn't open there.
75% of the people that testified live in the development that
It might have been.
I helped farm as a kid. Now, you know, now they're like,
No, but
no, you
They
can't,
built
you
theirs
can't build there. You know,
Yeah.
this is such a great
Right.
community.
Right,
And,
close
you
the
can't-
door,
and I'm like,
behind them.
I remember planting corn in your front yard. You think
Yeah.
I wanted your house there? No.
Well, it's no different than Foxlag when it was a farm and people was in here when Paul Crampton developed
Emerald
it
Point.
across.
Right.
You know, they forgot.
Which is where the
Oh,
case
right.
law.
Right.
That's exactly what.
You were the last one done.
So I don't think I was on the commission, I guess, when the Walmart site plan and all that was done. So they tried to do apartments on the other side of the road and it got rejected.
Well, you wouldn't hear that meeting.
We had those since I've been on,
Yeah, that's,
Oh,
that
really?
was,
Turned them
I must have been
that's,
out.
you missed
for the
that.
same reason we had this evening.
Correct.
All right, well, we'll
That's a,
next month we'll develop.
yeah. I mean, I'm interested in that case law because it concerns me if, you know, there's precedent set there on a zoning side.
But
We
yes,
have to understand that.
yes, but on the other hand, I wouldn't want to knowingly make a decision that I know is wrong because I think case law supports it. You know, I would make my decision based on what I think is right
Well,
and then take it to court if you don't like it.
and we're just making, I mean.
We're making a
We're
recommendation,
making a
that's right.
recommendation to the county commissioners, and then they're gonna have to talk to Kirk Downey and.
But it does beg the
his
point
input at
of
that point.
school facilities and roads and things like that. If you want to encourage economic development in an area, if that's what you want to do, then you need to address that.
Challenge. That is the challenge. Yeah, so we'll, back to the point, we'll get, we'll go ahead and put on the schedule for the 6 o'clock on the 4th, October 4th. And if we evaluate the, what comes in terms of site plans and so on, we can maybe adjust the time back up to 7.
Yep.
All right.
I have a minute after adjournment.
Sure. Let's get a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
So moved.